One of the readings of the Torah of this particular week is called Behar. Literally means in the mountain, in Mount Sinai. And the Torah starts explaining one particular commandment, which is called in Hebrew Shemitah. What does it mean, Shemitah? Shemitah means let the land rest. The Torah says that 6 years we have to work the land, a period of 6 years, and then the 7th year we have to let the land rest. And then when there are 7 consecutive periods of 7 years, then comes a year of Yovel, Jubilee, which means 2 consecutive years, the 7th year of that particular 7th period, plus the 50th year, because 7 times 7 is 49, plus the 50th year, the land rests. Now, why is it called Behar, mountain? What's the connection between this mitzvah, this commandment of letting the land rest, and Mount Sinai? And the idea is, actually, the commentators explain this, our sages explain that the details of this particular mitzvah, commandment, are explained actually in this Parashat Behar, Behar Sinai, in the Mount of Sinai. But the mitzvah was generally mentioned before, in Parashat Mishpatim, already mentioned, that the land has to rest and so on. So, why is the Parsha called Behar in Mount Sinai, and why is this particular mitzvah the beginning of this particular Parsha? Because just as the details of this commandment were given in Mount Sinai, not just the general idea of the commandments, but the details were also given Behar Sinai, in Mount Sinai, the same thing applies to all the other mitzvahs. Don't come and think that the Torah only gave us general rules, and our sages, are kind of crazy, and they came up with different ideas and details and so on. Details don't really matter. The only thing that matters is that a general way, whatever way you understand it, it's okay. No. You're making a mistake. Just as this particular commandment was mentioned in general in Parshas Mishpatim, and in particular in this particular Parsha, and the Torah says, Behar Sinai, in Mount Sinai, the same thing applies to all the other commandments. The generalities and the particular ideas of each single commandment were mentioned in Mount Sinai. Sometimes the details are directly mentioned in the written Torah, and sometimes God let the sages explain and reveal, show how the details are also mentioned, at least in a way of alluding to the ideas of the details in the Torah, but mentioned, maybe not mentioned directly, but alluded to in the Torah itself. Why certain commandments are in one way, certain commandments are in a different way? That is, certain commandments, the details are clearly mentioned in the Torah, and certain commandments are not so clear, are just alluded and so on. I don't know. I don't have an answer, but that's God's will. But the point is, again, just as the details of this particular mitzvah were mentioned, Behar Sinai, in the Mount Sinai, the same thing happens to every single other mitzvah. Now the question is, wait a second. Mitzvah Shemitah, this commandment of the resting of the land for 1 year in the 7th year and so on, it doesn't look like a very important and general thing. Rather, it looks like a very specific thing. It only applies to the land of Israel, and it only applies once in 7 years. It doesn't even apply today, at least biblically speaking. Most of the opinions say it does not apply today. Rabbinically speaking, we can say yes, or whatever the case is. It doesn't look like really a general mitzvah. Why do we learn from this particular thing to all other mitzvahs? If there's a place where we're going to learn and apply this teaching to every single mitzvah in the Torah, it should be a very important mitzvah. So what's the importance actually? What's the lesson behind this particular mitzvah that makes it so important? So again, let's go back. For 6 years, we have to work on the land. We have to be involved in earth, in the land, and so on, and work with it, and so on. 1 year, you have to let the land rest. But the point is, not just let the land rest. The point is, you should actually rest, and you should actually reconnect to God. So for 6 years, you're involved into earthly, mundane things, and 1 year, in a period of 7 years, you should be actually remove yourself from earthly and mundane things and focus in God. Let the land rest. Let your work, so to speak, rest, and develop your connection to God. And we see the truth is that it works both ways. In order for you to be able to be actually into the land and not be affected by the land, to be involved in earthly, mundane things and not be actually swallowed up by these things and become a mundane person. So you need a very strong preparation of connection to God. Only when you're really conscious of your godliness inside of you, of your connection to God, you can go down to the earth, you can go down to mundane things and not be affected by them. On the other way, on the contrary, affect the mundane things and make them holy. That's one way. So you need, first of all, a 7th year, so to speak, in order to be able to work on the rest of the 6 years. And the same thing happens the other way around. In order to really appreciate what it means, a connection to God, dedicating yourself, your time, and so on to God, you need 6 years of work. After you actually worked the land for 6 years, and you realize how far you're from God, and you realize how cold, how dry is life without spirituality, only then you can really appreciate the 7th year where you actually connect to God. So we see that there are two things that are important within themselves. The 6 years of working and the 7th year connecting to God. And this is a teaching and lesson for every single one of us. And that's why the Torah chose this particular mitzvah to teach the other mitzvahs, just as the generalities were given in Mount Sinai. The details were also given in Mount Sinai, and we learn it from this particular mitzvah. Why? Because this mitzvah shows actually what the Torah is all about, what Judaism is all about. Judaism is be involved in the world, refine the world, really go into the deepest and so on. However, never forget your connection to God. Never forget that the purpose you're going down into mundane things is not to enjoy the mundane things. No, the purpose is to reveal the godliness within the mundane things and reconnect them to God. But for that, you have to be connected. So there are times in which you have to be involved in the world, times in which you have to be removed, let the land rest, quote unquote, from the world. This is the whole thing of Judaism. And the truth is that even if the practical application of the commandment does not apply to every single human being. Like, for instance, I live in Argentina, so it doesn't really apply to me, the 7th year, but the teaching, the lesson behind it, being involved in the world, to refine the world, being connected to God, and so on, this applies to every single person. And one more detail, specifically speaking to Bnei Noach, to non-Jews that want to follow the message of Judaism for non-Jews. People might think that there are only 7 simple things, don't steal, don't kill, and so on. But the truth is that there are many, many, many details behind those 7 general ideas. This is something mentioned in Sefer HaChinuch, the book of education, in the Mitzvah, when he explains each commandment, the commandment 416, you can look it up, actually it's very interesting text. He mentions this idea that 7 commandments of Bnei Noach are very general rules and ideas. But behind those general rules and ideas are many, many ramifications, many, many derivatives that are also part of the message of Judaism to non-Jews. So don't come think, just general things, that's it, you're fine in the eyes of God, so to speak. No, there are details. And the connection to this particular reading of the Torah is that the details were also given in the Mount Sinai. Never think it's something that a crazy rabbi came up with. No, the details of each single service man does to God were also given him on Mount Sinai.